Okay, welcome to the station entitled Shakespeare and His Patrons, or as I like to call it, Getting Paid. Here we go. Alright, so first your outcomes. You should need to be able to define the word patron, so know what it means, and thus the verb patronize. And then know when Shakespeare's acting companies were formed and who patronized them. Okay? Here we go. So first, what's a patron? It's a person who pays and supports your work or efforts. Usually it happens for artists, musicians, painters, sculptors, writers. They all need money to pay their bills and buy their supplies, and Shakespeare was no different. And during the Elizabethan period, it was actually expected that the nobility and people with money would do this. We need more people like that today, don't we? So here's some information for you. First, Shakespeare had a lot of patrons. We just picked some of the most important ones, and the idea here is to really give you an idea of how they were involved. So first, there's a guy named Edward Manners, the 3rd Earl of Rutland. It's kind of cool. This individual was a friend of Shakespeare, and he encouraged Shakespeare to write with such unique voice and style. Hopefully, as we think, he really encouraged Shakespeare to be unique. And so maybe we have him to thank for such wonderful work. The next guy is kind of a weird name. His name is Henry Wriothesley. He was the 3rd Earl of Southampton, so there we go. We got those wealthy nobility people. He is mentioned specifically in dedication pages in 2 of Shakespeare's really long poems. One of the 2 that are titled. One is Venus and Adonis, and the other is called The Rape of Lucrece. And they are both specifically dedicated to him in 1594. The next patrons were a father and son. There was first a father, then he died, and the son took over. And they were Henry and George Carey, the 1st and 2nd Barons Hunsdon. And they paid considerably for Shakespeare and his actors. They grouped them together. And remember, Shakespeare didn't run the group. He just wrote for them. He was actually only a small percentage of a shareholder. So he wasn't the boss. Actually, a guy named Richard Burbage was a bit more of the power for the group. But anyways, Carey's the Barons Hunsdon footed the bill, and because of this, the men changed their name to Lord Chamberlain's men, because that was the titles of both these men within Queen Elizabeth's court. And so they made sure that everything that they wrote, he got to see for himself. He had to approve it. If he didn't approve it, and they did something wrong, he's not going to pay the bill. You got to please your boss, even back then. So they did really well with the acting company, and so well, in fact, that they performed for royalty. And now Queen Elizabeth was not a patron. She was not a patron of Shakespeare. However, she encouraged theater. She loved it. And she loved Shakespeare's works because those men were constantly going to Whitehall Palace to perform. Now, imagine the situation, because you've got a boss and Lord Chamberlain's men who's paying your bills, as I've said, but you got his boss, the Queen. And if you do something that she doesn't like, or God forbid, you presented a play that is against the monarchy or has any type of negative slant against the Queen, there's no trial. You go to prison and you die. Because it's treason. Whether you did it or not, you wrote it, and that's bad. So anyways, they didn't have that problem, and Elizabeth enjoyed the play so much that she actually got into it and did some research on the Henrys, on the Richards, because those were Shakespeare's plays. So the big thing is that she did not go to public theaters because it would have been scandalous, as we've talked about. For nobility, you didn't get actively involved in theater, so she had them come to her, and they built a stage in Whitehall Palace. In 1603, King James accedes to the throne after Queen Elizabeth's death. Now, Queen Elizabeth ruled from 1558 to 1603. Oh my God, 41 years? That's amazing. 45 years, if I did my math right. And then we get this guy coming down from Scotland, and he was what they called a dandy. Not really a respectful term, obviously, because he didn't really rule. He kind of just he wasn't powerful like Elizabeth. But anyways, he's on the throne, and he loves the theater so much that he actually takes Lord Chamberlain's men from him which he has to do because that's the king, and you got to play that game. And he renames them the King's Men in 1603. So now everything they do is under the auspices of the king, which is a big deal. And Shakespeare goes to town with it, and he writes some really fabulous plays between 1603 and his retirement, including Macbeth, including Othello. So we have some wonderful things that are happening. And so I bid adieu.